Hello learners and welcome back to your own channel LIY English Learn It Yourself. So in this video we will be learning the first unit from the fourth section of class 11th English textbook of Maharashtra State Board. It is 4.1 History of English Drama. This is quite an interesting and informative unit. However, completely theoretical. That's why students find it too heavy and a little boring at times. So I have come up with this video in which I have tried to make this unit as engaging as I could using creative mind maps, colorful images and interesting illustrations. I will be explaining everything in English and I have already put up a video on this unit with the Hindi explanation, link of which I will put up in the description box for those who wants to check that out. So without further ado, let's start learning. The topic is quite lengthy, so I have divided it into three parts. If you see in your textbook yourself, you will find that there are three major subtopics given in the unit. They are history of English drama, elements of drama, and types of drama. In this particular video, which is the first part of our drama series, we will cover the history of English drama. So let's start learning. If you have a friend who has a habit of exaggerating things or overreacting even on the simplest issues, most probably you will be responding to them as you are so dramatic. How dramatic you are. Ab kitne nautanki ho. So if you do that, it means you are correctly using the adjective form of the word drama. You have understood the meaning of the word drama completely. So with this we understand that drama is a performance which is essentially loud, exaggerated and larger than life. It is an audio-visual medium. The audience sitting around, in front of, close to or even in the last row of the theatre should be able to hear and see what the actor is doing or saying on stage. For example, if you are in a theatre watching a drama live and in the story as per the script, if you see that the actor requires to whisper into the ears of another actor, you'll notice that this stage whisper is far louder than a whisper in real life. This would be an example of willing suspension of disbelief. You know as an audience that this is not how you whisper in real life. But for that temporary moment, you are willing to believe that this is a whisper of real life. So this is an example of willing suspension of disbelief. It can also be defined as the willingness on the part of the audience to accept the unreal, to accept whatever is shown to them. So it may also mean sacrifice of realism and logic for the sake of enjoyment. We go to the theatres for the sake of entertainment and enjoyment. So in that period of time, we believe whatever is shown to us without questioning the logic and practicality of the same. So it means we are suspending our disbelief during that period of time. This term was coined by the poet and an aesthetic philosopher Samuel T. Coleridge. And the term often applies to fictional works of the action, comedy, fantasy and horror genres. And it means the willingness of the audience to overlook, to ignore the limitations of a medium. Just like music, dance, arts and literature, drama too is a medium of expression whereby performers express themselves artistically. And this performance is based on a script which is in the form of dialogues. We see how a story is represented in a novel in a narrative form. In poetry, we see language is expressed in rhythm and meter using rhyming words and various kinds of figures of speech. Drama is the specific mode of fiction represented in performance. A play, opera, mime, and ballet are performed in a theatre, on radio, or on television. So by far we are very clear about the meaning of the word drama. Now let us look at the definitions given in your textbook for the word drama. The first definition by Shorter Oxford Dictionary goes like this. Drama is a composition in verse or prose to be acted on the stage in which a story is related by means of dialogue and action and is represented with accompanying gesture, costume and scenery as in real life. So, by this definition, we understand that drama is not limited to prose only. It can also be in the form of poems, long poems that are performed on stage, in which a story is told by means of dialogue, action, and is represented with accompanying gesture, costume, and scenery as in real life. Now, let us look at the second definition of a glossary of literary terms by M.H. Abrams, and it goes like: drama is a composition designed for performance in the theatre, in which actors take the roles of the characters, perform the indicated action, and utter the written dialogue. So, with this definition, we understand that everything that is shown on stage or performed on stage is pre planned, is organized very well in advance, in which actors take the roles of the characters that are there in the story, and they perform whatever action that have been indicated to them, how it was directed to them by the playwright, and they utter the written dialogue as per the script. So, these were the two definitions given in your textbook. I am sure you have understood the meaning of drama completely. Now, we will study about the history of English drama as given in your textbook. Drama has its origin, or you can say seeds, in folk theatre. We therefore cannot consider drama merely as a part of literature, because in literature, words are the medium. But drama is something which uses multiple arts, including words, scening effects, music, gestures of the actors, and the organizing talent of a producer. So basically, it takes a lot to produce a drama. The dramatist must have players, a stage, and an audience. Without any of these, drama is impossible. The beginnings of drama in England are obscure, not very clear. However, there is evidence to believe that when the Romans were in England, they established vast amphitheatres for the production of plays. But when the Romans left, their theatres departed with them. Then there were minstrels, they were basically entertainers, and people enjoyed their performance too. But gradually, by the 10th century, the ritual of the plays, that itself had something dramatic in it, got extended into the rudiments of a play. It means drama that was just the part of a culture was established into a complete discipline by the 10th century. Up till now, the themes in dramas were only religious. But between the 13th and 14th century, drama started having themes which were separated from religion. The words themselves were spoken in English. A longer dramatic script came into use, and they were called as miracle plays. Later, these religious dramas were the morality plays in which characters were abstract vices and virtues. These were allegories. What are allegories? Allegories are the stories or poems or pictures that have some hidden meanings in them. These secular morality plays have direct links with Elizabethan plays. The Renaissance imposed a learned tradition, classical in depth, with themes of education, general moral problems, and secular politics. The plays had nothing to do with religion now. There were examples of both comedy and tragedy. Thomas Keat, Christopher Marlowe, and William Shakespeare are the prime dramatists of this era. It was Keat who discovered how easily blank verse might be converted into a useful theatrical medium, and the same thing was used brilliantly by Shakespeare in all his plays. The genre of tragedy developed in the hands of Keat and Marlowe. Comedy had also proceeded beyond rustic humor. But by the 90s of the 16th century, the theatre in England was fully established, but complicated conditions governed and controlled the activities of the dramatist. Now, things in society were changing rapidly. So were the theatres. The public theatre of the 16th century differed in many ways from the modern theatre of 17th century. It was open to sky, without artificial lighting. The stage was a raised platform with the recess at the back supported by pillars. There was no curtain, and the main platform could be surrounded on three sides by the audience. Around the theatre there were galleries. In the 17th century, the enclosed theatre concept gained importance. There was increasing attention to scenic device as theatres became private. The 16th century witnessed the greatest dramatist Shakespearean era. He wrote for the contemporary theatre, manipulating the Elizabethan stage with great resource and invention. But the genius of Shakespeare should not allow the rest of the drama of his age to be obscured. Contemporary to him was Ben Jonson, a classicist, a moralist, and a reformer of drama. In comedy, Jonson's genius is found at its best and his influence was considerable. The Restoration dramatists leaned strongly upon him. In 1642, the Puritans closed the theatre, which brought this greatest of all periods in the history of English drama to an end. And with the civil wars, no theatre existed between 1642 to 1660. The next phase, which appeared after the Restoration, produced a very different kind of dramatic literature. Dramatists like Chapman, Thomas Middleton, Webster, and Dekker were at the forefront. When Charles II came back with the Restoration of 1660, the theatres were reopened in England. The Restoration comedy achieved its peculiar excellence. Drama developed into class drama with upper class ethos. It lasted beyond this period into the first decade of the 18th century. Comedy in the early 18th century declined into sentimentalism. It became comedy of manners. George Etheridge was its most important exponent. From such depths, the drama was rescued by Oliver Goldsmith and Richard Sheridan. With Sheridan, something of the brilliance of Restoration dialogue returned into comedy, but with more genial atmosphere. The characters were firmly presented with clarity, reminiscent of Jonson, but with no depth in Sheridan's world. No new interpretation of human nature. In this, he was nearer to Oscar Wilde than to Jonson. Then started the age of the modern theatre. The modern theatre, with its picture frame stage, its actresses taking female parts, its movable scenery designed to create a visual image of the locale of each scene, and its artificial light was developed during the Restoration period. There is clear influence of France in theatre, the audience, and the themes. The drama of the early 19th century was on the whole on the way to decline because of many causes. The theatre was home mainly to irregular spectacle, melodrama, and farce. A simple external reason can be found in the monopoly held by the two houses, Covent Garden and Drury Lane, for the performance of serious drama. The audiences which gathered to the 19th century theatre had not the intelligence or the imagination of the Elizabethan audience. The danger in the 19th century theatre was that, above all, it was unrelated to the life of the time. The changes in the structure of society had so changed the human personality itself that a new interpretation was essential. Ibsen, the great Norwegian dramatist of the 19th century, dominates the modern drama. He developed modernist, realist, social, and psychological dramas like The Doll's House, Ghost, and Enemy of the People. The extract of An Enemy of the People is given in your textbook, which you will study further in the unit. They are far more subtle in stagecraft and profound in thought than anything in the modern English theatre. But it was only George Bernard Shaw who was deeply influenced and affected by Ibsen's innovative contributions and experimentations. He was the most brilliant playwright of his time. He alone had understood the greatness, the genius of Ibsen, and he was determined that his own plays should also be a vehicle for ideas. The responsibility of elevation of the English drama to the brilliance of the Norwegian fell with Oscar Wilde and G.B. Shaw in the late 19th and 20th century. The 20th century showed a talent in the drama with which the 19th century could not compete. H. Granville Barker, John Galsworthy, St. John Erwin were some of the playwrights who explored contemporary problems. St. John Erwin had been associated with a group of Irish dramatists whose work was normally produced in the Abbey Theatre in Dublin. Much that is best in the modern drama in English developed from this movement. One of its originators was Lady Gregory with W.B. Yeats and J.M. Synge. They were the most important dramatists of this Irish revival who used a sense of tragic irony, a violent species of humor, and a rich and highly flavored language. T.S. Eliot experimented with Greek tragedy in the early 40s of the 20th century. Other dramatist of the modern era, John S. Bond, wrote on people who grew up after the Second World War. Kingsley Amis wrote about frustrated, anti-establishment young people. S. Bond's Look Back in Anger brought a new vitality to the theatre scene. It was more a cultural phenomena than the work of literature. Other important playwrights of the modern era include Anton Chekhov, Bertolt Brecht, Eugene O'Neill, Arthur Miller, Tennessee William, Eugene Ionesco, Samuel Beckett, and Harold Pinter. Now, this was all about the history of English drama. What about India? The earliest seeds of modern Indian drama can be found in the Sanskrit drama from the 1st century AD. Mahabhasya by Patanjali provides a feasible date for the beginning of theatre in India. The major source of evidence is a treatise on theatre known as Natya Shastra, written by Bharat Muni, is the most complete work of dramatology in the ancient world. It gives mythological account of the origin of theatre. Modern Indian drama, however, has influences from all over the world, as well as Sanskrit and Urdu traditions. So with this, we have reached the end of the topic. Now let us quickly revise the history of drama overlooking all the periods. So with this, we have reached the end of the topic. Now let us quickly revise the history of drama overlooking all the periods. If we see, this is how the history of drama is divided among all these periods. It started with medieval period, then came the Renaissance period, Restoration period, Victorian period, modern period, and postmodern era. Medieval period lasted from 11th to 15th century, and it was the reign of Henry VI. These were the times of didactic plays, mystery plays, miracle plays, cycle plays, and morality plays. Among them were the famous one, Every Man in His Humor by Ben Jonson, and Robin Hood by Howard Pyle. Then came the Renaissance period, which was from 1600 to 1700, and it was the reign of Elizabeth I and James I. These were the times of tragicomedy plays, melancholy, and revenge plays. The greatest among them were Romeo and Juliet, which was a tragedy, Midsummer's Night Dream, a comedy, and Henry IV, which was historical, and all these three plays were by Shakespeare. Then there was Dr. Faustus and Jew of Malta by Christopher Marlowe, Duchess of Malfi by John Webster, and The Changeling by Thomas Middleton. Then came the Restoration period, and it started from 1660, and it was the rule of Charles II. And it was the time of heroic drama, pathetic drama, and restoration comedy. All for Love by John Dryden and The Way of the World by William Congreve were the famous one. Then it was the time of Victorian period, which is from 1837 to 1901, and it was the reign of Queen Victoria. All types of plays were performed during this period, and The Importance of Being Earnest by Oscar Wilde, Candida by G.B. Shaw, and by Henrik Ibsen there were two dramas, A Doll's House and Enemy of the People, which were very important. Then it was modern period from 1901 to 1945, in which new kinds of dramas were coming up like stream of consciousness, absurd plays, poetic drama, and radio drama, in which Pygmalion by G.B. Shaw and Murder in the Cathedral, which was a poetic drama by T.S. Eliot, are noteworthy. And then started the postmodern era from 1945 up till 2000, and almost all types of dramas were performed, in which Look Back in Anger by John S. Bond and Waiting for Godot by Samuel Beckett are the important ones. So with this, we have covered almost everything about the history of English drama from your textbook. I hope you understood everything and enjoyed learning it with me. If you did, give this video a thumbs up, share among your friends, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much.